This video will get you started on developing the driver program for the simulator operation. And this truthfully is the driver program for the whole program, simulator and all. But the key point on this one right here is that this is a non-trivial program. It's big, there's a lot of code, there's a lot of things that can go wrong with it, and you have to make it work before the time is up. So this is the kind of program where you need a structured strategy for implementing the program. And I'm going to use a 6-step programming process. You don't have to use exactly that process, but you should use some structured process, or this one will be too hard to do. It's just too big. Let's go ahead and take a look at what we're working with here. I'm having to compromise this a little bit because my access to the online Vim or the gedit is not very good right now. It works, but it's a little bit slow. So I'm going to do this in one file while you'll be doing it in multiple files. And you have experience with doing the multiple files up to this point, so that should not be a problem. But I'm going to demonstrate creating the large-scale program as we go through. Now our step one operation is really just saying, how does this program work? What does it do? You've already seen the program run, and you're going to be writing the master program right here, what we call the main, or what's really called the driver of this program. It won't have a lot of running code in it. It will have some decision making and some error displaying, but it will mostly just call other functions to make the program work. We always start these programs by initializing the program itself. That'd include titles, variables, and so on, but that's a step 2 item we'll talk about later. So we'll check for only one argument. Now, if there's only one argument, it means they did not put the arguments on the command line like they should have, the -dm, -dc, and the other stuff. So there's going to be a show message right there, and then there's going to be unset the program run flag, because there's going to be some flags used here to make this thing work without doing a lot of nasty if-else's and so on. So the show error message, in fact, will include the instructions on how to use the command line operations. So we'll move on to that. We'll set the info flag there, so when it falls through, it is in fact going to display the information. And then we will initialize the file name to empty. That just gets us started so we don't have a fake file name until we need it. We will loop across the arguments. Now the absolute minimum arguments would be the /sim, would be argument 0. The first one would be -rs, which would be run simulator, and the third one would then be the config file. Turns out the way this loop works, it doesn't matter the order you put it in, but we show it to the user in a certain way so it makes sense to them. But we're going to loop across the command line arguments. Whenever I do loops, I always show my begin and my end at my indented level so I can see what's going on there, and it helps me when it comes time to actually putting in the code. So we're going to find some lengths to verify the file name, and what we're really going to do is we're going to find the file name length they give us, and we're going to subtract 4 from that because the last 4 characters in that have to be .cnf. And we'll come back and discuss that just a little bit later on. Once we have done that, we'll check for the -dc. Now all of these are pretty much if statements because they're one-off things. The DC could be by itself, the DM could be by itself, the RS could be by itself. Okay, so I'm checking for the DC. If that's the case, then I'm going to set the config upload flag. And that's at this point all you'd need to say. The config upload flag will upload it, and then the display flag will say it's okay to display it. Then I'm going to check for the -dm. And in this right here, when we're checking for this, it's okay because each pass through is only going to find one thing. So we're going to say otherwise, which probably involves an else. Check for the DM, the display metadata. If that's the case, we still have to upload the config to get the file name for the metadata. We'll set the metadata display flag. Otherwise, we'll check for the run simulator. Now, as it turns out, the run simulator is going to have both the config and the metadata uploaded. So we'll set that one right there. We'll set the run simulator flag. Otherwise, if we have run out of the command line switches, then we might have that file, but we got to qualify for it. So we set the file name to a variable. We get it from the argument. We'll set the program run flag, which means we're the program is still good to run. We're okay with that. And then we will update the argument index, and that's to continue us back to the top of the list here, top of the array, and that will be within that loop. So now, what we've done here is we've collected up the flags for saying, okay, we're supposed to do a -DC, are we supposed to do a -DM, are we supposed to do a -RS? And each one of them has their own things. DC just means do the config flag for uploading and displaying. But DM say we've got to have a config flag, and then we'll set the display flag, which later on will tell metadata to upload. So when we see the -RS, we're going to set the run simulator flag. Now that is different from the run program flag, and we will see as we work along how that works. Okay, so we're going to check for the command line failure. Did anything go badly here? And once again, if that's the case, we'll show the error message and end the program. And that error message, again, to remind you, that is showing the user exactly what switches and command line arguments should be there. So now we're going to provide that command line information to the user, as I said. We're going to check the program for a program run. Now this is where we said program is okay to keep running. So we've said we've caught something, we found something that works okay, program can continue running here. If that's the case, we're going to upload the config file. And by the way, we can check both of these flags at the same time because yes, it's okay to keep running the program. And if the config file is to be uploaded, it has to be uploaded first. So we will in fact upload it, and it's a Boolean, so we'll check for success on that. If that's the case, we will check the config display flag. And if that's the case, we'll display it. Now, if it did not, if we uploaded and it did not work, we have a file failure. We'll show our error message, and we will unset the program run flag. Now, we check that program run flag. This is going to be step by step. Can continue to check this to make sure that it's okay to keep moving on. Again, this could be defeated. You could keep from having to do multiple checks of this with ifs and elses. But for something of this size right here, you're going to be buried in ifs and elses and nesting, and you really want to keep this readable. Okay, so again, we're going to check for the program run flag. We've apparently succeeded with the config if the program run flag is still true. So we'll upload the metadata file and check for success. We'll check for the metadata display flag, in which case we will display it. And now we'll check for the run simulator flag. We're kind of under one umbrella for two things. For the program run flag, say, yep, you can keep going. Then we're going to upload the metadata file because there's only two things possible left. One is to upload metadata and one is to run the simulator. Either way, we have to upload the metadata. So we check that display flag, and if that's the case, we display it. We will check the run simulator flag, and if that is the case, then we will run the simulator. Otherwise, now this is an otherwise outside of uploading the metadata file, something happened with that. We'll have to show the error message and the program, and we're past the point where we have to keep setting the program run file. We failed our way through, and so this is the very end of our actual operations. But as we noted before, the config file is going to come up with allocated data. It's going to come up with dynamic data, and we have to put that away. This is unlike Java. In C, we have to put back any memory we use. So we will clean up the config data. We will clean up the metadata. We'll show the program end, and then we will return success, which in C land is just returning a 0. Kind of long-winded here, but this is a big driver, and you'll notice we're really not doing much. We're just testing to see what we should do. And then we are doing, for example, we're doing the upload operation, and we're doing the metadata upload operation, and we're doing the run simulator, but these are all function calls that go outside of the driver. The driver itself should not have anything that's necessary for the operations of the program. Now in this particular one, we're going to find out that we need to show this error message and show what went wrong here. And so we will talk about that. In fact, that's going to turn out to be a function because we don't want to keep repeating all the stuff we have to print out. But we will come back to that and discuss that. So this is step 1. So now step 2 is where you just flesh out the details if there are any. There's not a lot in this one right here. Everything needs to happen. Initialize program, check for one argument, show error message, and so on. All of these are important and critical steps. And by the way, I would add to that, every step here can tell you that your program is running. you should be able to walk yourself through this English and operate each single line right here of operation and know that when you get done, this program will do what you want to do. In other words, the program is written. It's really now just a matter of fleshing it out with some code. But we do have one thing to flesh out a little bit, and that's the initialize program. Because under initialize program, you will at least initialize your variables, but in our case, we're also going to show the title. But that really is the only step 2 item in here because everything else was a critical thing that's necessary for the program. These are still critical, but they're substeps of this particular step right here. And so once we have steps 1 and step 2 done here, we can move on to what's going to be step 3, where we'll talk about what functions we need to use in this program. And we will go into that in the next video.